Most of the greatest NFL wide receivers of all time got to play with legendary quarterbacks. Jerry Rice wouldn't be the all-time receiving leader without Joe Montana. Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne wouldn't be the icons we know today if it weren't for Peyton Manning. Amazingly, some great receivers were, well, great despite not having the best set of QBs throwing to them. I'm Justin Fraction, and today we take a look at the 10 greatest wide receivers that had terrible quarterbacks. And a big shout out and thanks to CamBam14 for suggesting this list. And we do hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, feel free to click subscribe down below for more cool videos every single day. But first, a note from Alex the writer and the choices he made on this list. Let me do this in a different voice for fun. These rankings are based on the amount of years these receivers had terrible quarterbacks playing with them. Larry Fitzgerald is not number one because he did have Kurt Warner for some time. He doesn't even sound like that. But anyways, there you go. Number 10, Braylon Edwards. The 2007 Pro Bowler was extremely talented, but had just one 1,000-yard season. That's not on Edwards, but rather his quarterbacks. He spent 5 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, with Derek Anderson being his best of all the quarterbacks he's played with. That says enough right there. He spent 2 seasons with the New York Jets, where Mark Butt Fumble Sanchez was his quarterback, and yet he did finish with 359 receptions, 5,522 receiving yards, and 40 touchdowns during his short career. Number 9, Steve Largent. The Seattle Seahawks legend was a 7-time Pro Bowler and twice led the NFL in receiving. Largent finished with 819 career receptions for 13,089 yards and 100 touchdowns. That's amazing considering Jim Zorn was his quarterback for most of that time. Zorn had 111 career touchdowns and 141 interceptions. His career completion percentage was a mere 53, and he was just all around not very good. That didn't stop Largent from dominating, though. Number 8, Chad Johnson. Johnson found a way to shred defenses apart despite having Carson Palmer as his quarterback for the bulk of his career. Palmer may be a household name to some, but he was extremely mediocre during his tenure as a Cincinnati Bengal. Nonetheless, Johnson was a 6-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro, and sits 34th all-time in receiving yards with 11,059. 2005 and 6 were Palmer's 2 great years in Cincy. Imagine if he was that good during his whole time spent with Johnson. Number 7, Tim Brown. Brown ranks 6th all-time in career receiving yards and receptions. The 9-time Pro Bowler and Hall of Famer finished with 1,094 catches for 14,934 yards and 105 touchdowns. Too bad he was stuck with the mediocre Raiders quarterbacks. It started with Jay Schroeder from 1988 to 2002. The Raiders recycled through quarterbacks until Brown finally got paired up with Rich Gannon in 1999. Brown had a trio of 1,000-yard seasons with Gannon as his quarterback. Imagine if they were together longer and he didn't need a new QB seemingly every year for a decade. Number 6, Anquan Boldin. Seeing this man play in his mid-30s is still quite the treat. Boldin, a Super Bowl champion and part of the 1,000-yard receptions club, ranks 14th all-time in receiving yards. He did a whole lot without a whole lot for much of his career. The Cardinals went through 6 quarterbacks in Boldin's first few years before finally settling with Kurt Warner, who made Boldin's stats even better. Oh, and Boldin put up a pair of 1,000-yard seasons with Colin Kaepernick as his QB in San Francisco. That's actually quite impressive. Number 5, Santana Moss. In an era that featured Chad Johnson, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss, the other Moss, Santana, had quite a career that was often overlooked. The 2005 Pro Bowler had 732 catches for 10,283 yards and 66 touchdowns. He played with the New York Jets from 2001 to 2004, and Chad Pennington was the best quarterback he had. From 2005 to 14 in Washington, Moss had 10 different quarterbacks to throw to him. The problem was that, by the time Washington had a relevant QB in RG3 in 2014, Moss was in his mid-30s and well past his prime. Yet he put up great numbers with so many different quarterbacks. Number 4, Torrey Holt. Thank goodness Holt had Kurt Warner for a few years. The 7-time Pro Bowler was part of the Rams Super Bowl 34 championship team. Holt was part of the greatest show on turf offense. He also notched 1,000 yards every year from 2000 to 2007. From 2002 to 7, Holt played with 7 different Rams quarterbacks. Mark Bulger was the best of the bunch, but he was no Kurt Warner. Imagine if Holt and Warner were together for a long time. Number 3, Larry Fitzgerald. Some may think he should be number 1. We understand that point. But Fitzgerald did have Kurt Warner from 2005 to 9, and Warner was one of the most dominant quarterbacks of his era, too. He also united a revived Carson Palmer in 2013, and the two became one of the NFL's most dynamic combinations. But Fitzgerald had 3 different Cardinals thrown to him in 2004, the best being Josh McCown. He also had draft bust Matt Leinart throwing his way. And from 2010 to 12, the Cardinals used 6 different quarterbacks. And yet he has 8 1,000-yard seasons, and he's in the top 10 in all-time receiving yards. Fitzmagic indeed. Number 2, Brandon Marshall. The 6-time Pro Bowler has 8 1,000-yard seasons under his belt, but 0 playoff games to show for it. That's not on Marshall, who always has been a bright spot on the mediocre teams he's played for. Playing with the Denver Broncos from 2006 to 9, he had average guys like Jay Cutler and Kyle Orton to catch passes from. He spent 2 years with the lowly Miami Dolphins, then spent 3 years with the Bears and the mediocre Jay Cutler. Then he spent 2015 and 16 catching passes from journeyman Ryan Fitzpatrick. The one thing that stayed consistent? Marshall's production. Imagine if he was on a team that featured a top 10 quarterback. That would almost be unfair. And number 1, Andre Johnson. We aren't saying Johnson is the best receiver ever, but the man never truly had a great quarterback. He's 11th all-time in receiving yards with 14,185 yards. In his 12 years with the Houston Texans, Johnson had to work with mega draft bust David Carr for 5 seasons. Then the mediocre Matt Schaub was his quarterback from 2007 to 13. 8 other quarterbacks in Johnson's tenure played quarterback for Houston. When he went to the Indianapolis Colts in 2015 to join forces with Andrew Luck, the latter missed half the season and didn't stay healthy. Johnson's last 2 NFL seasons were disappointments. If only the legend had an above-average quarterback, but the mediocre Schaub was the best he ever had. Are there any other NFL wideouts who were great despite having terrible quarterbacks? Join us in the comments below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps us out a ton and we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to Total Pro Sports though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.